All right, well, elsewhere, EvenUp, a startup bringing artificial intelligence to personal injury law, was named to Madrona's latest AI 40 list, and that highlights startups building intelligent applications. Co-founder and CEO Rami Karabibar sat down with JD Durkin to discuss how his platform is helping get the justice that personal injury victims deserve. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, so we started EvenUp 5 years ago, and it's to even up the playing field in personal injury cases. There's about 20 million claims every year in the US of folks that get injured, whether it's in motor vehicle accidents, dog bite cases, or any other type of injury. And the big problem that we're trying to solve is to even up the distribution of outcomes. So what I mean by that is you could take two very similar cases today, and one can settle for 500K, the other can settle for 50K. And ultimately what that means is the system is not as fair as it should be. And so our whole mission, even it up, and ultimately get these 20 million Americans the justice that they deserve.
And what does that look like in terms of actual follow through and practical application for all of these dense and otherwise pretty weedy legal cases?
Yeah, so we're a generative AI B2B SaaS startup. So we work with the attorneys that represent the folks that are injured, and we really help them across the life cycle of their cases. So what I mean by that is for these lawyers that we partner with, we draft legal letters on their behalf. We also help them understand the value of their cases. And ultimately, the things that we really care about is how can we get these folks to settle their cases as fast as they can for the fair amount. The beauty of our system is we generally see a lot more cases than any individual attorney can on their own. So we're better able to say, for this case, this is the best way that you should potentially manage the case, what the outcome should be. And the more cases we see, the better the system gets.
Yeah, when we have this overall conversation about generative artificial intelligence and potential industries that could be disrupted, you frequently hear about disruption for the legal field. I wonder if in your process with your co-founders, has this taken a fair bit of convincing people in the legal field and attorneys to trust partnering with a great AI company like yours?
For sure, it matters a ton. The thing about law, a lot of folks say generative AI and legal tech are kind of shoo-ins for another because there's a lot of text that's part of this. Yeah. However, the thing that's really important in law is accuracy. You can't be 90% of the way there in a legal document that can get you disbarred as an attorney. And so the thing that's really important for a lot of our customers is how do we ensure that quality is there? Because 90% is not good enough, and 99% of the way is the way to go. So the way we've approached this problem is by ultimately building our own models that are fine-tuned to this space, so that when we see a case like this, or the raw case files, think of as medical records, medical bills, police reports, we get a meaningfully higher level of accuracy than a human can on their own.
I imagine that's a really important part of the process, because as anyone who's even casually interacted with a large language model knows, hallucinations are there, mistakes get made. And to your point, it sounds like you don't have a lot of room for error.
That's right, yeah. And so the beauty of the way we've built this is there's much less hallucination risk when it's trained specifically on personal injury cases. And to put this into perspective, we see thousands of cases every week. That's more than any law firm in the US. It's about over 100,000 a year. And that's where, again, every case gets you that incremental basis point or percentage point of accuracy. That stuff really matters for our customers.
How do you expect that the relationship between the law field and generative AI will continue to evolve? And how do you most expect EvenUp to be uniquely positioned at that intersection?
It's a good question. We specifically operate in one part of law, which is the personal injury domain. And I can't speak for all legal. I think my first reaction is incentives really do matter across law. Think about our industry in personal injury is the attorneys that we work with, they operate on a contingency model. They make a percentage of the value of the claims that they manage. And so they are very incentivized for anything that can help them reduce time on desk or increase case outcomes, which makes them more of a shoe-in for generative AI. Now, when you're dealing with other types of attorneys that are billed hourly, the incentives are a little bit less clear. And so for us, we do want to stick in our lane and ultimately be able to continue on this path of really rapid growth, because it makes sense for us, it makes sense for our customers with the law firms, and most importantly, it makes sense for the 20 million Americans that get injured at no fault of their own.
Yeah, of course, the millions of lawyers we have in the US know that ethical considerations to how they go about their business is so important, always has been since their days in law school. What does that ethical consideration look like for you and the company, knowing that so much of the work you do is partnered with lawyers and attorneys who similarly have to take into account those types of considerations?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, every one of our customers really cares ultimately about, again, their clients and obviously like their own P&Ls given their contingency model. And the way I describe it is everybody kind of knows what the right answer should be, at least in our space. So I'll give you a stat just to kind of symbolize some of this. On the thousands of cases that we see every week, about on average, these cases are settled about 150 days later than they should. And so when you go to these law firms and you ask them about, hey, are you sending your cases on time? A lot of them will tell you we are not, because we're short-staffed. We don't have enough time to look through all of the cases that we have. And something that's important to keep into perspective for these law firms that we partner with, they're talking about 100 cases a year on average by attorney. And so it's really, really hard to be on top of that many cases. And so for us, when you have AI and you have software that you can ultimately give these folks capacity, and you can see real metric outcomes of settling cases sooner for the fair amount, that's what makes it an ethical, ethically positive, and makes sense for them and for their clients, because ultimately they're delivering a better service to their constituents.